And welcome everyone. This is John the Net Guy. It is show 424. This is my Eleanor stream, as I call it. Why call it Eleanor? Well, that was the 1967 Shelby GT Mustang that Nicolas Cage was trying to steal again in Gone in 60 Seconds, one of my favorite movies. And he's had trouble with the old one. And to be honest, I had trouble with my original Eleanor. I'm going to bring that up so you guys can see it. If this is your first time here, I'm John the Net Guy. I do PC builds. I do home, auto, and tech reviews. So you've probably seen that. I'm going to go ahead and do the Thermal Take Tower 100, the Net Guy search here. So if you actually look this up, and it's kind of hilarious, I actually have the image of this machine immortalized in the search history of the internet here. And I actually have it right here on Java. So I'm going to bring you guys over so you can see that. This was the machine that I built on Java. And so it looks really, really nice. And we're going to have a really nice looking machine today as well. I'm going to get the cameras all lined up. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. I just want to make sure that the chat is working good and proper here. And we'll get started. I know we probably have a few people in. Oh, look at one of our friends checking in, Ben Robinette. Welcome, Ben, to the show. You were here actually earlier this morning. Thank you again for tuning back in. It is a rare 2-show day. I need to put up a couple other things real quick. We go down to the captions. I'm going to put the URL at the bottom where you can get all of the parts if you want to build this PC yourself. So we're going to do a PC build. It's all going to be live. Knock on wood, it's going to start up. Usually I build these things and then we unbuild them and we put them back together. It's kind of like a food show, and we kind of know what it's going to do. This hasn't been put together yet. They're still new in box parts, so we're going to find out if it works or not. I have a couple other sponsored parts I want to just bring in real quick. If you look at the video description, you'll see those. One of them is a new tool. This is from Phalanx. And this is their mini electric screwdriver kit. And it's got the coolest barrel-shaped 60-in-1 screwdriver. I'm going to show you that here in a second. It's charging up behind me. I also have a monitor for this build, which is pretty rare. This, we bring you guys back, came from the ViewEdge company. CS27FK is the model number. The interesting thing about this, it's a 27-inch 1080p monitor. It's 180 hertz. It's only $89 right now. So if you're looking for a monitor, I'm going to put this together. We'll run it through some tests with the machine. We'll see how it runs. But 180 hertz, and the other reviews have not been bad for this monitor. So that's something we want to test out ourselves. We'll do that a little later in the show. And then lastly, I don't have it up today, but I've got a part coming that I wanted to show you guys, which is pretty cool. Hey, welcome Circuit Rewind, another one of our show regulars. Good to see you again, man. This one you guys are going to like. This was sent to me by a filament company because I've been looking for, different supplies of filament. They actually sent me the filament, but then they sent me this gorgeous print. This is a print in place. So these segments printed all at once. Look at the multicolor printing on this Dragon. It is almost like a color changing depending on the angle. And this is all the filament. And if you look at the quality of the texture of this print, it's all 3D printed, but this is probably one of the most ornate models I think I've ever seen. And the filament itself is not that expensive. So very affordable filament to do cool stuff like this. So you'll see this more in a future show, but I wanted to share this because we were talking about 3D printing in the morning show. And we've got this here. The other couple follow-ups from the morning show. The Wise vacuum is completely gone. There was only 17 left when you guys watched this morning. I was telling my wife we need to grab a couple more, one for a gift at least for some family members, and another one to do our upstairs. And they're gone. But they're gone on Amazon. They're gone on wise.com. But I was able to find at walmart.com that they had them, and I ordered from there. So I don't know if they're going to honor the stock. I hope they do. But that was an interesting update. I'll show you the quick thumbnail for the show today. This is my thumbnail works here. As you can see, the Black Friday Eleanor PC build. There's the Mustang. What a gorgeous Mustang. Let me know what your ideal sports car was growing up. Hopefully most of us are adults now, and let me know what you were wanting to drive when you were a kid, or maybe what you did drive. While I do that, I'm actually going to get the Amazon people in here because we do have some parts that are available on Amazon. So I'm going to get that started. Give me 1 second. I got to load up the Amazon Live app, and I got to run back here. And then I have to say start stream. I'll shrink this down, and then we will come back. And if everything went well, this go live button turns red. Every once in a while, it freaks out. We're good to go. So I'm going to hit that button. We're going live on Amazon in 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! Hello, Amazon. Excellent. We will get started here. So again, I'm going to do a quick product demo of the phalanx screwdriver, what's in it, what's involved with it, and then we'll get the parts out and we'll start our PC build. We can do that. If you have questions, it's a completely live show. I have the chat over here running, and I can take a look at it and answer your questions. We'll also pull up Amazon real quick, just so you know what parts we're building. If you visit that URL across the bottom, so amazon.com/shop/thenetguy, you see something that looks roughly like this. If you come down to this gaming monitor, it says My Eleanor PC Build. And we don't set this as our default browser. This is all the parts that are going to go in this build. So it's a good looking build overall. And, very unique. It's going to have a 4060 in it. It's going to have a 2 terabyte, very fast SN770 hard drive. We're going to toss in at least 32 gigs of DDR5. The motherboard, if you could get a different one, I might consider that. This one is the ROG Strix. So again, high-end Asus motherboard, but that's the one that I had to get warranty replaced one time. So just, don't get that model if you can help it, only because it is covered under warranty, but I've had issues with that one before. But it's has tons of cool features as far as the motherboard goes. So here we go, taking a look at the phalanx screwdriver here. It is on Black Friday special. I'm going to bring this over. We'll do a proper unbox of it here so you guys can see exactly what it looks like when it's in all of its glory. So this is the phalanx screwdriver. Comes in a fancy box like so. This is the E3 Max with 60 different bits. I'm going to bring you guys down a little bit closer so you can see the quality of this thing. Very nice metal cylinder. It's going to have some information about it. 500 milliamp hour battery. It's going to charge off USB-C, so no batteries to deal with on this one, which will be pretty nice. And then I'll open it up here. You can see it's kind of like a cigar case almost, but it's spring loaded. You can see the spring here. So we spring unload. We've got the screwdriver handle there with a power button. Now I bumped the power button already, so it's showing you can go to 3 different power levels here. And that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to have to use 3 on most of this because the other ones are very gentle. They will stop automatically, but I want to use the higher performance. The other cool thing, built-in light. So that's going to light up my work area. Very excited about that. This is available right now on Amazon. It's $47, but it has an enormous $18 coupon. So it actually gets it down to, it looks like it's going to be 29 something. So 29 and change. And you get this, very nice screwdriver. The only thing I would say that would be kind of interesting is if they could have flattened a small portion of this so it doesn't roll off my desk, because I'm worried about hurting it just because it is so artistic. But you can see it'll start to roll and could keep going. The other cool thing is the way that they store the bits. This is magnetically attached, but you can tilt it down. And this is the coolest carousel I've ever seen for bits. So you can see 60 different bits, all your tri-Ys, all your very difficult Torx bits. There's your Y bits. You got your standard Allen heads. You got your diamond shape heads, your triangle heads. And then down here, you go all the way up to a Phillips 2. Which for most computer stuff is good. If you want a smaller one, and I'm going to try not to drop these, you can go with this Phillips 1, which should work. And that's what I'm going to use to start out. And then I can just put this off to the side. So very cool. This is going to fit in your bag. It's not going to go anywhere, not going to fall out. The lid can come off a little bit easier than I'd want, but it's magnetically attached. So I think I'm going to carry this around a little bit and see how it works for me. But Very easy to load the bits, just like so. And then you can turn it on and use it to remove screws just with the push button. I do like the push button a little bit better than the ones that are just completely automatic. I've had some that are tension set and automatic because I don't think those work quite as well. But that's from the Phalanx company. I want to thank them for sending that out. And we will get started with our PC build here. I'm going to check the chat one more time. DB7. That's from our friend Ben Robinette was a DB7. That's an Aston Martin, isn't it? DB7. That's like a James Bond car, if I remember right, if I remember my cars. So I'm going to turn this monitor off back here so it's not in our way. And then I'm going to get to doing the computer build. So the motherboard for this build is that B760i. So it is a very small ITX build. It's going to be for the LGA 7700 series CPU. So that's going to be in here, and it's got a cover over the pins because we don't want to hurt those. 4 SATA ports here, USB 3, USB-C, those two. One PCI 16X slot, but that's just because, again, this is an ITX board. Love the fact that it has the integrated backplate. It's going to have your super speed USB-C, 2 of them. It's going to have a bunch of extra USB, 2.5 gig Ethernet. So you're going to have all the networking you want. Built-in Wi-Fi 6E, HDMI output. If you're using a chip that has HDMI built in, you can do that. And then if we come back over to here, you can see it's going to have a bunch of additional I/O ports. You're going to also have your CPU power header up here. Now, don't let me forget to put that one in. But this is funny. This machine is literally already sold. The guy actually just sent me the money over Venmo before the show about an hour ago. And I'm like, okay, now it's committed. I have to do this because he's already paid for it. So we'll see how that goes. Another interesting thing I'll just show you on the back of this system motherboard is where we can put an NVMe. So it does have one M.2 slot on the back here. And the beauty of that is it's just going to look really, really clean. So when we get this all installed, we won't have to worry about any hard drives or anything sticking out. It's going to be a really, really clean build. Got another friend of the channel, a PC Tech Hustle checking in. PC build, let's go. You know, I was wondering if I should show that little Eleanor scene with Nicolas Cage, but I think I'm going to get myself in trouble with like a million different copyrights if I do show it. The GPU for this build is going to be the PNY RTX 4060. Why PNY? Well, because I got a good deal on it. I actually used one of those GPU buyback places that I'm not allowed to talk about while on Amazon, and I purchased this one, but the one in Amazon is the same exact edition. It's just in white. So if you're looking for a 4000 series card, this is below $300 now. And with 8 megs of RAM, it's going to do great for 1080, or 8 gigs of RAM, I should say. It'll do great for 1080p. The other thing that's interesting on this one is the performance is about the same as an RTX 2080. So we've been looking at that between the 2080 and the 4060 with this buyer. And I said, you know, this 2080 was a top tier card, 4 or 5 years ago, and now you can get the exact same card in a $300 or less than $300 card, a 2-fan model in this case. The CPU for this build is going to be an i7 12700KF. So that's that LGA 1700 socket. The 12th gen is, you just can't kill them. They're such a great processor. When this came out, I think this was the answer to the AM4 platform. Now they've come out with 13th and 14th gen. There's been issues potentially with power in the 13th and 14th, but the 12th gen Intels have been super stable. K means unlock, F means that it needs a GPU. So this doesn't have a graphics card. You'll see that they say discrete graphics required. Now, the one I actually marked in the carousel, I believe, was the K SKU, so it doesn't require a GPU, but I would get one anyway. And so this 12700KF is going to be our CPU for this adventure. If we go on to memory, and I've already got this memory out, I had really good luck with Team Force memory. I know memory prices just went all over the place recently. Delta DDR5 RGB RAM has really cool looking RGB on the top. and a neat, attractive outside. It's not going to get in the way of any coolers. But this is DDR5 6000. And if I remember right, this is actually on the motherboard's list for manufacturers for memory. So that's another good thing there. We're going to cool this whole setup here with the Dracenia CPU cooler. Why did I pick this one? Well, this is going to be for a budget build that I was doing in the T100. This 120 millimeter cooler should do just fine. This case only lets you fit 120 millimeter total of capacity for cooling in the top. You can do some other things. I saw a guy do a 240 mil radiator down the side, but I didn't quite like the look of it. So I wanted something that was 120 millimeters. I wanted something that was RGB as well and programmable. So this is addressable RGB. Being an all-in-one, you don't have to worry about any sort of filling of liquids or closed loops or anything like that. So makes it a whole lot easier to build for your first time build. You can get a 120 millimeter cooler. The hard drive for this one is the SN770 Black. This is an absolute rocket of a hard drive if you're looking for something to give performance to your gaming PC. This one is a Gen 4 with a read speed of up to 5150 megabytes per second. So 5 gigs a second read speed. So you're loading your game textures, 5 gigs a second. Now, the write speed, I don't know if it actually shows that, but they've been pretty close to equal on these. But Western Digital definitely coming through with the powerhouse for the storage here. And awesome. PC Tech Hustle's just checking in. He goes, absolutely agree on the 12th gen is was and still is such a sweet spot CPU. Now, there is a deal on the 12600 right now. So if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit slower, you know, not as many cores, they have them right now in the 130 range. That's another $50 or a third off of the 189, which is the sale price right now for the 7th gen. Sorry, the i7 12700. So if you want the i5, the 12600, you can get that on sale as well on Amazon. The power supply is a little bit of an interesting mix here. So this is harder to find an SFX power supply in the larger ranges. I happen to get a great deal on a bunch of these Cooler Master V850s. It is an SFX power supply, so it will fit in your ITX builds. But what's neat about the tower is it doesn't actually require the smaller power supply. So I may or may not swap this out for an Earthwatts before I do the final delivery on this. We'll see. I'll work with the client on this, but that was what we were looking at from a power supply perspective. And being modular, it's going to make it that much easier to not have to run any extra cables and shove extra cables in this case because there's not a lot of room. It is an ITX case. Speaking of that, let's pull the whole case up here. The very large Tower 100 over here on the right side, or technically your left side, my right. This case is my Eleanor. It's a gorgeous looking case. Let's see if I can bring you guys on the side camera where you get a little bit better profile of it. There you go. So it's a gorgeous looking case when you build in it. It's not that tough to build in, especially for an ITX build, which can usually be a little more challenging. So I wouldn't have any problem saying build this for a beginning builder, but there is one quirk at the top that I'll show you because kind of everything comes through the top on this one, including your IO, which is kind of interesting. It comes out the top side versus a lot of the other ITX cases. It's either the bottom or the back. So another interesting thing. So that is the complete build here with everything that we've got. We're going to try it with the View Edge monitor after we get everything booted up. But what I need to do first is test this thing. We got to do a quick bench test on it. Now, I might have to hunt around for a CPU cooler, or we might have to actually pull the cooler out and attach it here. But let me show you the steps that I would normally take to build the motherboard on the bench. Now, normally I would use the motherboard box, but this is one, an ITX that I don't have the box for. And second, I think I can use the power supply one here. So this power supply one is so small. Now, I'm going to open the power supply up, and you're going to see how dainty this SFX, you can see the palm of my hand, the size of my hand. This thing fits in the palm of my hand, and it's about, gosh, compared to a standard PC power supply, maybe 45%, 50% the size. But you can see it has all the necessary I/O and all the cables that you want. So that's the SFX. Now it does come with a bracket here, and so you can kind of see the difference in size. So this bracket is if you want to run it in a full-size case. So you can see volume-wise, a lot smaller in size. But if you want to run it as a full-size, you can do that and just use the adapter. So I'm going to pull the power supply out because we're going to need that. Also comes with additional cables and zip ties. We're going to save those for later. And I always like to deliver to clients the extra parts. So things like this, if in case they ever decide to change power supplies, they can do that. Taking a quick look at the chat. He's trying to get me kicked off Amazon. I swear, sometimes, American, you push the limit. No, it's not the size of the PSU. It's what you do with it that matters. That's what he says. Was it not the size of the fight in the dog? It's the dog in the fight. Something like that. Okay, so I'm going to grab, actually, this box for the power supply. Now, we're going to install the CPU, memory, and all the other components. I'm going to go CPU next because I just want to make sure, one, that everything looks great on this motherboard before I put the CPU in it, and that we're going to be having no problems. I do need to put the storage on the back, so we'll do that. Graphics card is going to have to go in even for our testing. So let's open up this Intel here. So this is the 12700KF. Now this is a delicate spot if it's your first time building a PC. Before, you used to have to worry about the CPU pins. You don't have to worry about that anymore, but now you got to worry about the socket on the motherboard. So I don't know what's worse. Sometimes CPUs can be more expensive than the motherboard they go in. So these ITX boards are incredibly expensive though, so that's not always the case. So there's the CPU here itself. You can see the back side is all pads, and that's because of the FPGA. That is awesome. Skulls checking in says, I've got the same PSU in one of my home servers. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good PSU, and it's going to have plenty of performance, a 10-year warranty, 100% Japanese capacitors, which is what you want because they don't blow up, and 80 plus gold. So the gold rating is decent on that. So I'm going to go ahead and open this CPU up here, and you can kind of take a look at it. So there is the bottom of the CPU, and you can see all of those little pads. Now, the CPU is going to have a registration mark in the corner. It's going to have this little tiny light gold in this case. Hopefully you can see that. That tells you which direction it needs to go in. And on here, it has that little notch in the corner as well. So as we're taking the socket up, you can pull this out. And we're just taking a look at the motherboard socket just to make sure. Usually these will pop off when you put the CPU in. So I guess if I'm telling you how to do it correctly, leave that on to protect the CPU pins. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the CPU in with that socket lined up and just set it down. So that's the easiest way to do it. Then as you push this down, that's going to click off, and you've protected the pins the entire time. You haven't had anything able to drop on them. If you needed to stop, you could do that. Just double checking the tension on this, which looks good. And there we go. CPU's installed. So did the major part there pretty quickly. Randy J is asking, where's your ESD strap? It's still at Amazon because I didn't buy one. That's a great question. Let me know in the chat, how many of you guys are worried about electrostatic discharge, one, and how many of you actually use ESD straps? That would be a really cool thing. I would love to actually know from some of our folks how many of you actually do that. So we got our CPU in. That's a good sign. We can go with our memory next. And memory this is a one-sided. I actually don't like motherboards doing this as much, but I can see because of the volume in the room. So this side is the only side that opens up. And so I'm going to look just memory-wise. You can see where that notch is and see if it's lined up. So I'm going to line it up with the notch on the motherboard. And a lot of times you have to put the memory in straight down. You don't do one side and then click it, but you have to do it straight down on these when they only have a single side. So now, other trick, if you're putting the second stick in, just look at which side had the barcode on it, because that's going to be the same one usually. So I can do the same thing on the second stick of RAM. Line it up here, line it up there, push down, and that will automatically close. So we got our RAM in there. That's a good sign. We're getting along pretty well. I'm just going to look real quick. Our main I/O block is right here. And so that's where all of our I/O is going to go in. I'm just looking to see if I have my RGB is up top, my CPUs are up top. I want to see, just while I have it out here, if they have labeled the CPU opt versus CPU fan. And that's where we might actually pull the motherboard manual up, depending on, CPU. So it is in the very corner here. Chassis fan, CPU fan, AIO pump. So chassis, CPU fan, pump. Remember that order when you're doing these kind of things is really important, because you don't want to backwards those and have the pump running low and your fan running high and things like that. So far we've gotten through 2 of these and the motherboard. Taking a quick look here. PC Tech Hustle, never used one ever. And that's kind of the same with me. I guess if you were doing a commercial job and you had a ton of risk potential that something was going to get fried, I have not necessarily used one myself routinely, but I do try to ground myself on a power supply. So if the power supply is plugged in, I try to touch the case of the power supply just to kind of ground myself. That's one thing. Now we can go on to the storage for this. Now, what's interesting is I don't have the 2280 retention screw here. So this is a 2280 hard drive, and what that means is it's 22 millimeters by 80 long. It's about the size of a stick of gum. And the amount of 2 terabytes that this thing can store and the performance that it comes out of is pretty amazing at that. American, I build all of my systems in a very dry room on carpet while wearing wool socks after running balloons on my sweater. Is it an ugly Christmas sweater, though? That's the important thing. So there is the Western Digital Black, the SN770. I've actually got, in the gaming machine behind me, I've got the SN850, and it is an absolute rocket as well. So great chip. Doesn't have any built-in cooling, but honestly, there wouldn't be any room for additional cooling here. So to install this, you simply put it in at an angle, tilt down, and then press down, and it'll lock an index right here on that screw head. So I need to now use my screwdriver for the very first time, and I'm thinking this might be the right screw head size, but I actually might need to go down. So this will be a great test of the phalanx. Give me 1 second here, because I'm going to grab my screw collection. This is a working computer shop, not only for doing YouTube, but I actually keep a bunch of extra screws in here for various different activities like this. And I'm just trying to see if I have one of my very tiny screws in here for this motherboard. If not, I know where to rob them, because I have another board right over there that I can grab one from. These things are incredibly small. How many people have lost their screws? Yeah, that is not the right size, I don't think. So I'm not gonna risk that one. That is a small screw, but not the one. Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna borrow a screw from the other system we have over here. This is a build for later, and I actually have the system partially built. So there's another system, and again, these screws are very small. I'm going to see if it actually comes out of this with this head, because I kind of picked that middle of the road head. I didn't say road head. Don't get me in trouble now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and install this here. Perfect. That was really easy. Again, that's using the phalanx screwdriver there. So this one I will reattach later, and I'll grab through my box of motherboard boxes that has all the screws. There we go. Okay, so we got the storage installed. We're burning right along. I don't think we're going for a 4-hour show, maybe 5. That's the record. I think PC Tech Hustle has the record for the longest stream, but he, in all fairness, he built the most enormous computer I think I've seen. That was like one of those double-sized cases and had like 12 fans. That was ridiculous. A huge AIO. It was really funny case build. Okay, so we're looking good so far. The biggest question is, will it post? Is this going to be a really short stream or is this going to be a longer stream? I'm going to go ahead and take the GPU here and we're going to line it up and lock that into place. So pretty compact looking little PC so far. And that GPU, I like that it's the 2-fan. A larger one would fit in the case, you'll see, so it may not go down much farther. But this is going to look pretty compact in this case as well. I'm just kind of lining everything up. So that looks good. Let's get the power supply out and plug in our power. The GPU, unlike some of the other 4000 series, looks like it only takes one set of PCI Express cables. So it's not going to take a ton of extra power, because being a 4060, it's kind of, sadly, it's an entry level. If I looked at the 2080s right now, they take a ton more power coming in. But these ones are got a lot more power efficient, it looks like, on the 4060. There we go. And my CPU header. Now, I may not even need a SATA plug unless that's how the fan gets its power, is my guess on the cooler. So I'm not going to plug this into power until I get the Dresenia CPU cooler loaded and ready. So I'm going to move this off to the side. We're going to do an unbox of the Dresenia CPU liquid cooling system. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure everything is in here. Oh, cool. I love the ones that, believe it or not, have the remote control, because it just makes it that much easier. We don't have to fight with software and compatibility and all that. So it looks like it's going to have a full control board here. It may or may not need this if it's the standard. I'm looking at these, and it looks almost like standard headers. So that has a sticky back. It is an all-in-one. So this is another interesting thing here. So it's going to have some instructions there. For Intel socket, it's got the information I need. It's going to have a thank you card here with some information about where to go. I'm going to check on Amazon real quick, make sure I didn't miss any questions there, and I'm going to pick some of the products we're looking at. James K., thank you for the follow, man. Really do appreciate that. I'm going to pick the motherboard right now in the Amazon carousel. So if you're just checking in on Amazon on that side of the screen, there should be a carousel of products. So being an all-in-one, this thing is going to be a single unit. So I can take the whole unit out here, and hopefully I don't have to uninstall and reinstall it. There is your CPU backplate. Most of these AIOs are going to have some sort of backplate. They have the longest syringe I think I've ever seen. You guys have to check this thing out, for thermal paste. And there seems to be plenty of thermal paste to do, about 3 of these jobs. So there it is. And then there's the backplate for the CPU cooler. So if I had to guess, and yeah, it's like every other one, you've got the different Intel CPUs. They just changed in diameter. So I'm going to put these on 1700. So I'm putting them one click out. And then we'll go proceed to installing, because this is a 1700 series CPU. Now let's hope, if I bring this over, that there's nothing in the way of this CPU. So it will line up and stick in like that. I just want to double check, because it is a perfect square, is it not? Yeah, I just want to make sure that this foam attaches properly and it's not going to ground on anything. Good. Making sure it sticks through, get some pressure on it. There we go. Okay, we'll bring you guys a little bit closer so you can see how we're going to attach the cooler. And these are the instructions. Let's see if I've done anything too crazy here. So the Intel LGA 1700, we've got the radiator mounted already. Make sure we take off the bottom for the thermal compound. Assembly into the radiator case, motherboard, pump on, backplate. Okay, looks pretty straightforward. I'm looking specific to here. Pump connection to hub. Looks like it's got a standard connector for ARGB and fans. So we may not need the Actually, yeah, everything looks standard here, so I don't think we'll need the controller unless we absolutely want to do that. So I'll see if we can skip that, because by not having to do the controller wiring, we will save a little bit of time. Just taking a quick look at the chat. Oh man, it was scrolling by here. Is that a regular size CPU? 850 watt is what we're talking about. It does actually in the case support a standard CPU size. So for people that are asking, Skull's giving me a hard time about the screws. I ordered about 20 of those little tiny M screws because it may have been lost over the years. Absolutely. Always ripping him for his build times. It was a gorgeous machine. I think you should put a picture of that up on the Discord and I can bring it up. Yeah, exactly. Blind text back in. He says, what did I miss? Hey, you're 3 hours ahead. You missed a lot already here. It's evening your time compared to me over here in Seattle. And thermal paste for CPU coolers. CPU is cool from CPU coolers. Very cool. Yeah, we got a ton of thermal paste in this one. So didn't miss too much in the chat. This is a completely live show. If you guys decided you wanted to join the chat, you absolutely can. So the bags here of screws are labeled. This says Intel, and it has spring-loaded there. And then these are the brackets for Intel. So this is an interesting choice on the cooler. So I'm going to have to put the brackets on the bottom of the pump. This is the time-consuming part of AIOs, is just getting all of this stuff right. But once you get all of this stuff right, they generally perform really well. You know, they can last for several years, and it's much easier than doing this on, say a retro rig or something. That's awesome. How many of those screws did you win with those GPUs? Oh, yeah, Skull won some great GPUs to take home from the last big event. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and look at the instructions one more time, just because I want to double check the way that they have these brackets. So the Intel bracket is the one here that's a little bit wider. That's normal. I'm just double checking. We have the Intel backplate. We have a couple of nuts that it says we're supposed to have, which I don't see in this one. So I think they're either pre-installed or we don't have those. I'm looking for the fine screws for the bottom, which I see here as well. So we'll go to the bottom of the pump now. In my installation, I'm just going to have to try to think about this for a second. So the way that the Tower 100 works, this is going to go up on the top, and this is going to mount to the board. So the board is actually going to be oriented upward in the case like this. So we're kind of doing some rough orientation here. So when I put this together, I don't have to change it multiple times. If I install the cooler like this, and I'm trying to see if the Dracinia logo, it does have text on it. So that's another challenge here. So their logo looks just like that. So if I run the cooler pipes to the right, am I going to clear this? I think it would work like that. So that's kind of where I'm aligning it to. So I'm going to have to install these Intel plates here. And usually what happens is they screw through the base into the brackets. But I want to double check that here. And that's the case. And the brackets on this one are supposed to be facing downward like so. So that's what they're looking like. So we get you nice and close and you'll be able to see that. So that's how they want the brackets to face. So if you're buying the 120 millimeter Dracinia cooler, that's how you're supposed to align them. I'm going to go ahead and get the screws out here. And it's going to be the finest screws. Now we're going to try how the Phalanx 60 holds up here. It's magnetic tipped, so that helps for one-handed pickup or dropping. I can pick that up again. I want to get it lined up. Good deal. And then I'm going to drive it in from the bottom. Perfect. Now I'm on setting number 3 here, and that's the highest torque setting. So you can adjust the torque as you need. And you can manually torque down on this, which is nice. That's another nice feature. Okay. Take this. I would like to not have any extra fan cables if I can help it. If you're just joining in, this is John the Net Guy. Tonight we are building a Black Friday PC. This is my Eleanor rig. This is the PC that wasn't. I've built this one before. I did it for Jawa and had a heck of a time with this one, not wanting to run right. Turned out it was a bad motherboard, a very similar setup of the PC. Maybe I'll show it here in a second from my Jawa account. And was able to get the motherboard swapped out. I had a friend that actually lived closer to the buyer, and so it was another YouTuber, and he's got a whole great video I'll link to about repairing this Eleanor PC. But he got it working, and the buyer was super happy, and they were really understanding, which I love. When you're building custom machines like this. But I was just unhappy that he had to go through all that. So there is the pump. There is the AIO. I'm going to zoom us back out a little bit. And if everything works right, let me get this sticker off. I almost left the sticker on. You guys are supposed to watch me. And Blind Tech's asking a great question. Why did I go with a 120 millimeter AIO? And it's actually because this Tower 100 system only has room up top for a 120 millimeter fan. So I probably would have gone bigger just for the looks, but I went with the 120. We'll take a look online because a couple of people have gone with the bigger fans on the side. So let's talk about thermal paste for a second because people are going to give me grief about this. Do you think this build would be good for spreading democracy? Always. Yes, this machine should spread democracy very well. Maybe I'll do a little bit of testing with it later. I like to put about a pea size in the middle. That amount of thermal paste is not going to go over the edge of the CPU usually. Let's see if I can get you guys down here. So that amount of CPU paste I like because it doesn't usually spill over the edge, and it's just enough when you have the right pressure to push down, and spread evenly. Now, other people will use a spreader. I never have, or they'll draw special designs. And actually, depending on if you've got like an air cooler with ridges, some people will pre-fill all the ridges, which is another option for you. So just lining up our back plate underneath the motherboard here. You can, if you want, and you get this set up right, you can actually take those strips off and it will hold up against the motherboard. I don't generally do that, but people can. Okay. So back plate is installed properly. Circuit rewind. Thermal paste. Bother. Yeah. It has its place, believe it or not. Now the Dracenea logo. It's interesting because I wish that logo was rotatable. I don't know if it is, but I'm going to have to put the cooler in this way. This is where you need about 11 hands when you're building a PC. So I'm going to get it down to where I can put one of the screws in for the cooler bracket. And I'm going to put it on our phalanx screwdriver we're using today. Oh, it's too heavy for it. The magnetism, that's another interesting thing, is it's magnetic. And so you'll see here. So there's the screwdriver I'm using with the lighted tip. It is magnetic, but it's not having a great time picking up this really heavy spring screw combo. So we're getting it close, but I'm going to have to play with it a little bit to get it lined up. There we go. Whew, I got lucky on that one, I think, because I think we're engaged. Now I can turn this a little. I'm going to put the opposite corner in. You always want to work opposite corners here. You guys are funny in the chat. You're missing a bunch of chat comedians now. Just saying. If you are looking for something to do on a Friday night, the Net Guy chat is a place to be. You know, if I didn't put the GPU in, it'd be a heck of a lot easier to put this in. So maybe that's a lesson if you're building this. Actually, I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to pull this GPU out because I can just push. Uh-oh, there it is. It's still engaged. But I'm going to push this tab down. I'm going to pull the GPU out of the way just to give myself room to be able to reach in there. Okay. Yeah, not easy setting this up with the AO. A lot of times I'll use just a test. If I'm testing this out, I'll just use a test bench fan. But since this has got to go in anyway tonight, why not? So now that I got two in, it's going to be a little bit easier. So I want to ask the chat, how tight do you tighten these screws down? I know the answer. I just want to see what our chat folks are saying about spring-loaded screws for a CPU. So I'm putting the extra last two in. Here's the last one. It was hiding. So we're going to put that one in this last corner. And now, obviously, kind of like changing a tire, when you're putting these in, you want to even the pressure across them. I think this motherboard also has the ability to use a different size cooler because it has hole cutouts for the different coolers. So I'm going to tighten this one. I go until the spring is tight all the way. There you go. That's the answer from Circuit Rewind. Same thing. Go until they lock. That's actually how it's designed. Absolutely. That really threw me off when motherboard manufacturers were doing that. I'm like, what do you mean you just go as tight as you can? There used to be just spring-loaded clips, things like that. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to reinstall the GPU. And this is where, once you have the GPU installed, this is where a motherboard box can help because we know if you're working, and never work on a metal table, obviously, but if you're working on something that's potentially conductive or you get a screw underneath or something, having a motherboard box or some sort of box underneath it is really nice. And it'll let the GPU overhang. I'm going to pull these to the side a little bit. I need to hook up the, looks like the pump is only a straight fan connector. It's not PWM. So I'm going to hook that to where the AIO pump is. I'm going to hook the addressable RGB up here to this header for the addressable RGB. Now, technically, the fan has its own header. I just want to see if they come with an RGB splitter, because sometimes they do. Just checking this out right now. I'm taking a look at the chat. Hey, Charles. Good to see you, Chuck. Noah's watching. Has learned so much from your videos. Noah was the recipient of our Scepter and Sapphire sponsored and Nerd on a Budget sponsored charity build, and he actually, it was kind of a funny deal. He had to build it the rest of the way himself. So we built it on stream, took it apart, sent it down there, and he went from building used PCs to getting to build on brand new hardware. That was an exciting build. Awesome. Good to see you here. Now this one, I was going to say, this is the controller they included. I don't necessarily need this controller because this motherboard has everything, unless I really wanted to use the controller. And actually, I can save the SATA cable if I take that out. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug her in. Did I miss anything in the chat? Do you guys see anything that I missed on this build? I'll zoom out a little bit. I've got GPU. I've got... Oh, I actually have to hook the fan to a header, don't I? That would be a good catch. So the fan will actually spin. So I got the pump connected. I'm going to go ahead and hook this to the chassis, the CPU fan spot. That is a PWM, so this fan should spin at a rate that the motherboard tells it. I need to put some graphics in here, so I've got my HDMI cable, got that pushed down. We're not necessarily worried about networking here, so I'm going to leave that off. I do want to go check the BIOS, so I do need to put a USB mouse in there. I'm just getting our items put together. NVMe, good question. The NVMe is actually on the bottom side of the motherboard. We put that in a little bit earlier. It's hidden. That's the one where I was looking for the M.2 screw. So I've got the mouse connected. Mouse is on and lit. I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take the power supply, connect it up here. Power supply is on. Now this is going to be hard to reach, but I am going to use the backup here. The net guy not worried about networking. The horror. I'm going to use the old-fashioned way to start a PC. If you know, you know. This is being able to push on the connectors by the power right here. These two pins, if I hit that, there we go. We're lighting up. So will it post? That is always the question. This is the post screen. Drum roll, and we're starting to get the color. I want to show you the top down in this too at the same time. Can I do that? There's the top down. I'm waiting for a post out of this GPU. I know the GPU works. I know everything else works. Side by side, and I need to get DVE2 to 3. There we go. It's posted. We got our Hammy BIOS. Let's see what we got on the BIOS, actually, in fact. So I'm going to take this and switch it over back to me. Coming back over. There we go. I can't actually see that because I'm not looking at the program main. There we go. 2 terabyte drive, 32 gigs of memory. The memory is not at the exact speed we want yet. That's okay. We're going to work on that. I'll talk about that in just a second. We've got a Wi-Fi motherboard. It is the right motherboard. So I would say that's a successful post. Now, I don't have the really cool colors yet on my fan over here because I don't have the RGB. I do have an RGB splitter I may consider, or we may actually hook the remote control fan in. And the only reason I would say to do that on this one is he's actually putting it in a game room. And so by having the game room concept going, I think he'll be able to use that remote control easier to set the colors rather than have to rely on the motherboard for everything. But it's all addressable RGB. I'm going to hit the F1 key here. We're going to go into setup. So it did post. So far, that's a good sign. I'm feeling good about this. I don't know. AIO pumps running at 2200 RPM. Looks like we got CPU fan is just humming along super slow because we're at 23. This thing is really cold. So we're good. If you are building a PC and you forget to do this, this can be 10% easily of your CPU performance can be bottlenecked by your memory. So make sure you turn on your DOCP or XMP profile. It'll be labeled, and that's going to take the higher of the memory settings here. I do see my SSD, but I don't have a boot priority because we don't have Windows installed. That's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F10, which is usually the save key. It's setting all of the stuff, and we've got our profile. I'll hit OK, and we're going to let this thing reboot, and we should see 6,000 megahertz on the memory. I'm going to take a sip here. Now, a lot of people ask, like, if a machine's rebooting a few times after you do this, what is it doing? A lot of that is memory training, or it's waiting for the RAM to basically clock with the motherboard, and you'll see it reboot a few times, and then it'll come back, and everything will look good. And that's just memory training itself. This only does have 2 sticks of RAM possible for it. So there we go, and now it's back, and the memory is XMP enabled. So it went right in the BIOS because there's no boot device. Let me show you a couple, just a look of the layout of the board while we're here. I have a camera that I can bring you over to. And I think this cable is holding us back. I wish I could go a little bit closer. So this is the machine itself. That's all the components for it. One thing you'll notice is that this fan doesn't spin in the Cooler Master. It's completely normal. Because this thing is so energy efficient, it'll only turn the fan on when it needs it if you're using this exact same layout. Get some thermal paste on this RAM somehow. There we go. That's the colorful RAM. That's the Team Force Vulcan RAM here. Or actually the Team Force. This is the Delta. This is the RGB RAM. This is a peel away. I'm going to leave this on for this infinity mirror. But that infinity mirror looks really, really slick. I want to see if I can tilt it for you guys to see. So that infinity mirror for what is a $45 AIO for 120, not a bad looking mirror. I love how it kind of just goes down there with the addressable RGB. So that looks pretty slick. The fan is the translucent fan over here. It's not addressable RGB, but let me show you what that would look like. So I'm going to pull the addressable RGB header off of that, and we'll pull it on and bring it over here so that you can see what the fan will look like when it's RGB'd out. There we go. And that has a really gorgeous RGB look. The Tower 100 is a very open layout, so I wanted to have a really good looking RGB set. So with these 3 pieces, just doing motherboard RGB is going to be really, really on point. I think that's going to look great. So very cool. I'll bring you guys back over here, get myself set up again, and now we get the fun part of transferring this into a case. So that's kind of the next stage, and then we'll install Windows and get it all done. And then we'll deal with the monitors. I'm just looking at our time. Under an hour, PC Tech Hustle, just saying, under an hour from start of the show to actually having a running PC. So I think there's some sort of record to be had there, but I don't know. To make things a little bit easier, I'm going to remove the power supply. So I've turned the power supply off. I'm going to take all the power connections off because we're going to have to reroute that. I love it. Cable extensions, one per customer. Amazon cart. Oh yeah, cable extensions are awesome if you're building a theme PC or you want a really good looking PC. So sorry, Jonathan. Yeah, that's an Amazon policy, I guess, on whatever cable extensions you're buying. So I'm going to take the GPU out again because now we don't need that now that we posted. These are always really tough to reach that little unlock lever on this little ITX case because everything has got to be tighter than it needs to be on this one. So there we go. GPU is out. Then we're going to do an unbox here of the actual PC. So I love that. Coffee's in here. RGB American, you're being paged. Yes, he is the RGB nut. If you can send me a couple pictures in Discord here, American, I will bring up your best RGB if you send that to me. Tell it not to switch device here. But yeah, you send me a message with that and I will bring the best looking one up. Oh, I love the chats, you guys. I just saw the Eleanor jump. Ah, man. I should have done that as the thumbnail. I love it. I love it. Just coming back here. Oh, yeah. So Jonathan flips PCs, Blind Tech on YouTube, if you want to look that up. He just rebranded recently. You know, I flip PCs, so I want to buy them in bulk. Absolutely. Jonathan's on the East Coast doing this thing all day long, building PCs like this. And so he's using cable extensions because that can give you some of the nicest look on a custom-built PC. So this is the Tower 100 case that we're going to be using today. I'm going to go ahead and open it from the top, and then we're going to bring it over. If I remember right, this one may be an Amazon refurbished, but we'll see. I've been really lucky with a lot of their stuff. Hopefully it has all of the fancy connectors that we need to make it good. And if not, well, we'll have a bench machine. So there we go. So if we're not looking at the top down yet, that's what it looks like through the top of the case. It has this great mesh ventilation at the top. I'm actually going to go back out here and we will pull it out and set the case up on the top. It is not an especially heavy case, I'll put it that way. So there is the machine. It still has all of the tempered glass covers on it, so it's never been peeled. So yeah, this one is in great new condition. Looks great. So other than watching me, what are you guys doing tonight? You got anything cool going on? This is the case. So you can see, kind of neat. I'll show you the I/O in the top because that is one of the most unique pieces of this. Let's see if I can do it this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bring this camera up so you can see the top. So this is how the I/O works on this case. It literally is a press down and pop up. You pull this grating out and it's going to have all of your cables and zip ties and everything, including a fan up top here already. Now it does have little block offs, plastic ones for the bottom. If you don't want to see through to certain parts of the case, you can put those in, which is really neat. And the rest of it, you know, I'll give you a quick tour of it, is all accessible through the top. So your motherboard's actually going to sit right here. The fan, we're going to actually attach underneath because we want to be able to see it. But to get the sides out, this is the secret trick of the T100 if there was one. It's these little screws. There's actually 5 screws. They're corner screws, and we may or may not, the phalanx may not have the depth that it needs. Oh, you know what? It's right there, but I'm not going to risk stripping it out. I'm actually going to grab another small screwdriver here just to get to these really deep recessed screws. That's not the phalanx's fault. It should have no problem getting to the rest of those, but just in case, I want to make sure I get these out without stripping them because this is the critical 4 screws, 5 screws for the top. So you take these 4 out, and then you see the front panel I/O. There's actually something holding on to that I/O. There's one last screw, the 5th screw right over here. Once you take this top out, Then we can start to do the sides and everything and really open up this case. So this is this really small screw right here is by the IO shield. So that's the top of the Tower 100. We take this piece off. It's like removing the hood. And now you'll get to see the rest of the cables and wires and everything that go under the top there. And this is also where I can now unlock the front. There you go. So that glass comes out. I'm going to set all of the glass down here and get to it at the end. This one as well. The whole side comes off, as you see, including the ventilation. I don't know about airflow on this case, but I wouldn't have, honestly, any concerns about it. You can see I'm looking at the back side. It's got a huge mesh here for the back side of the motherboard. I'm going to go to this other side, and I can pull that side out. So really, very easy machine to work in. If you're looking for an ITX build, it looks really complicated and it looks really attractive, but overall, super easy to build in my opinion. Okay. I'm going to bring the chair over here. Mr. Nathan, you going to put an Eleanor model inside the case once it's built? Oh, man, that's why I love you guys. This is awesome. This spot right here is honestly right now going to be completely empty unless I put something in there. And you might have just picked an awesome idea. I could do another interesting thing in this case is I can move this upper fan and turn it into a lower fan. And by doing that, we would actually be able to updraft through the case. But this would be an awesome place for a die-cast. Somebody find me an Amazon link for that die-cast model. It would need to be, let's take a look. And the faster the shipping, the better on that. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get a tape measure out here because I think we're going to have to put that in here to make this Eleanor. Yeah. Now, the new buyer is actually a Chevy fan, and he does have a Dodge too. But so about a 4-inch to maybe a 5-inch die cast would fit perfect in there. I see somebody in here says, be careful with that thing. Interesting. So, John, what do you think about a die cast Eleanor in here? That could be a really interesting. It's an inside joke for me. Maybe it's not as cool for you, but this is going to be a great looking PC regardless. You know, we could do other stuff in there as well. What I'm doing is I'm actually taking the fan that's the factory fan up on the top. Now I could have left it here and we do a push-pull configuration. But I think that I actually want to put it down in the power supply basement if possible, because this is not going to be a super huge power supply, and I can updraft from the bottom to give it more air. And I'm not sure if a push-pull is going to be needed here. John Raymond checks in. It's another John Freeman. Interesting name there. Gone in 60 Seconds is one of my favorite films. Well, this is going to be definitely an Eleanor. Hopefully less temperamental and lots of performance. It's the goal here. So this is the 120 mil fan that it comes with up top. What I'm looking at is, can I relocate this fan basically down here without hitting the PSU in the basement? And I think because I've used a special PSU here, I think we're going to be able to pull this one off. So, yep, that's what it looks like. Now, if this is your first time building PCs and you're just checking in, do you see that orientation on the fan? If you don't notice the airflow direction listed or marked anywhere, the easiest way to tell is that it usually goes towards the back cage. Thanks, Zach Tech Tips, for that tip for me a long time ago. I was always looking at them, going, okay, it's got to go this way. Without even looking at the blades, you can pretty much always run them towards the cage. So the airflow is always going towards the back cage. So that said, I want to put that this way. I'm actually going to take out these other SSD mounts. Like I said, I'll include them in the case for the buyer, but I'm going to take these SSD mounts off because we don't have any SSD drives. We've got an NVMe drive going in. We're just going to make it look even cooler by doing that. So we're really going to clean up the look. And then I'll show you what those other plastic plates were for. So these plastic covers here. Oh, do you like an instrument cluster? The AIO be digital? Okay, now you're giving me too many ideas here. So I believe, if I remember right, these plastic plates can go down here and lock in to block the view if you don't have a full-size GPU. So we're going to use a smaller size GPU here. So we won't have that. And I can actually set that in just like that. Okay, so this plastic plate here is covering up the basement and actually is going to improve airflow a little bit because I don't have a full-length GPU. So that's going to just clean up the look, the aesthetic. I can go here. Before I do too much of this, though, I'm going to actually leave it open. We'll do this towards the end because I want to get to wires and other stuff. But that's basically what I'm doing here. If I quit dropping them, is I'm basically covering up this whole corner. So then the air is going to come shooting up the top. It's going to go through that really slick AIO. My mounts right here are for the GPU. So the GPU on this one, about yay long. So it's going to fit just before this. So that'll work really well. I'm going to pull this one out temporarily. We will get to building. Very cool. If you're just tuning in, this is John the Net Guy. We are building Eleanor here. This is a Intel 12700. We got it to post the first time, so maybe the curse is lifted on this one. And it will be ready. I'm going to look through putting some screws in for a fan underneath here. I want to see how I can get that to work. I may have to invert the case temporarily to get to these fans. Can I get through the top side here? Man, this is going to be challenging. But if I can get this fan to do an updraft fan here, this is going to work out great. And I do see the notches for it, so it was designed to fit in here. This is where things are going to get interesting. I have a screwdriver for this one. We're going to look and see if that Dracinia came with the long fan screws in its bag somewhere. Or the case did come with those. I do see some long fan screws in the case shroud here. So if you're just tuning in, I'm building a Tower T100. Maybe I should put the case up here on the side so you guys can see it. This is a ITX case, but it uses a standard non-SFF power supply. I just happen to have an SFF. So I'm going to go ahead and screw in the fan to the bottom here. So I swapped its location. Now, I don't know if I like the look of that because the screw heads stick up between that. So I'll have to see what I think of that after it's all built. So not the hardest build if you're a first-time builder and you're going to be building your ITX. This is a pretty forgiving case. Lots of room in here too, which with most ITX builds, I would kind of usually caution people away to certain ones. The Height Revolt is another one that is real popular for ITX builds, but man, is it tough to build. And I remember Yakto, our friend, putting that one together, and that was a challenge watching that build. Okay. So hopefully clearance will be fine, and we're going to have the power supply well vented here. I'm going to bring the air for the power supply in through the bottom so we won't have any fights for ventilation here. You guys can see what I'm doing here. I'm actually cheating, and I'm going through the top here, which is the bottom, technically. I removed the filter, and I'm just screwing the bottom fan, so it'll be an updraft configuration now. So hopefully you can see that. The only thing I don't like is these little screw heads sticking up, but hopefully those will go unnoticed once we put the car in there. So that'll look pretty cool. I am going to try to route this fan wire out the side while I have it, and then we're going to put the power supply unit in here. Now, it looks like it's set up for the full-size power supply, so we are going to use the adapter. And or, you know what? I'm going to call an audible. I'm going to use that other power supply I have. Just because this one has the room for it. This is also, I believe, a gold rated. Yep. 92% efficient. This is the Antec, because I think, one, it's going to save a little bit, and this doesn't require, or even you can't even see the power supply once it's installed, so it won't matter. And 750 is going to be more than enough power versus 850. 850 is a little overkill even for this, so I'm going to do that real quick. Taking a look at our chat. Oh, Jonathan posted in here. I can't click the link there. Let's see if I can get out of the way. Oh, you know what? It's not letting me click your link, Jonathan. I'll have to bring that up differently here. I'll bring that up here shortly, and we'll take a look on there. But people that are in the chat should be able to see that now. I want to double check. This case is also a modular power supply design. Brand new power supply here. I should correct and say semi-modular power supply. Okay. So this is the look of that power supply here. So 750, it's semi-modular in that your main connectors, which you always have to hook up, are here. So it's going to have your standard CPU power supply. I think maybe even one SATA, not even a SATA looks like. So yeah, it's going to have the basics. This has got plenty of cable, which we're going to get to route here. But I want to see how we're going to get this in here. This is always the challenge on this case. I'm going to have to remove the back. So these screws here, I'll show you on the upper view. You take these 4 screws, they're captivated screws here, so they're going to be stuck in here. There we go. Oh, here we go. So Blind Tech is just letting us know he sold a 7700 1660 Super in the SAMA Review 4361 case for $400. That's a pretty good deal. A 770 is not a bad little chip either, you know. Decent. So here's again where we can run our wire. This is the power supply adapter. So we're going to go ahead and install that on the power supply. And power supplies you can install one of 2 ways. In my case, I'm actually going to want to bring the air in from the bottom and out through the back of the power supply, the cooling air. So I'm going to very quickly do that. And then let's take a look here as to which power supply we use. If this Antec fits, we'll use it. So what I was saying is you can either install the power supply like this so that the grate is at the bottom and the air comes in and then out the back. Or you can install it this way if you want to bring air from the inside of the PC out the back. There's 2 ways to install. Really is personal preference and, you know, planning out your airflow. So I'm going to do this. And what's funny about this case is they give you a huge area to run your cables up the back. So there's probably 1.5 inches easily to run those cables. So it makes it really, really easy. You're not fighting. Like in a normal ITX, you could spend half your time trying to get the cables where they need to be. I'm going to switch over to the Phalanx. That's the one we were testing out here today. Now that we're going to put bulk screws in, I can use the Phalanx and save a little bit of time. So you can see how quickly that goes. It does pretty good. I would say that torque-wise, this is not going to twist your hand off. So some people like to over-torque screws. That can be a problem. If you need to torque a screw down beyond the motor limits, you can do that. I want to see what I'm at. I'm at 3 here. And there we go. You can see it. I'm going to bring you on the side here. This is the Phalanx screwdriver we're testing out here. There we go. So you can see it's stopping on there, but I can actually just turn it by hand if I want to get more pressure. So not the strongest motor, I'm going to point out, in this screwdriver, but they're not meant to be. These are not like impact drivers. You're not drilling, you're not pushing drywall screws through drywall, right? So you do have to kind of give it a little bit of grace there. But even on setting 3, it's not... Oh, there you go. That one sunk all the way down just fine. So even on setting 3, it's not necessarily going to be driving them home with a lot of gusto here. I'm going to put the last screw head in. I'm getting some advice in the chat. Looks pretty good. Ernest is, or Elmist. Here we go. Elmist Guzman from YouTube. You may want to plug the GPU power cables before installing the PSU in that case. That's interesting. So let's see. SATA and PCIe. I don't have PCIe, do I, on these? Or do I? Let's take a look. Actually, I do have one, Elmist. I've got one set of PCIs, and luckily the 4060 only uses one set. That was great advice, though, because I would have to take this all the way back out if I didn't. So I'm going to go ahead and see if this power supply fits. And you know what? With the lower, I'll show you the fitment issue I'm having. Because I put the lower fan in a push-pull configuration. So I wonder if you guys can see that. There's actually a fitment issue right here. So when I'm coming down with this power supply, it is tapping the edge of that fan. So that might mean that I'm going to use the SFX adapter, or I've got to pull that bottom fan out. Technically, it doesn't need that fan. So let's see what the chat says. Do I take that fan out and I use the standard 750 watt? Or do you guys like the idea of doing that push-pull and going through the whole tower that way? It's an interesting one. Let me know what you think in the chat if I should go with the other power supply. Let me see if the other one fits with the right brackets. It's supposed to. So again, another reason I said earlier in the show, make sure you always keep your brackets and include them. Circuit Rewind says, my entire life is ITX FSX. Okay, so SFX. So there's one vote for keeping the smaller PSU. So this is going to be funny because we're actually going to be adapting to an adapter to another adapter. So I'm going to go ahead and put this adapter in, and we're going to see if we get the clearance that we need on this one. I think that could be like a who's on first thing. What's the clearance, you know? I have too much fun doing this sometimes. I'll be here all week. Well, not really. I've got a couple errands to run tomorrow. Hopefully everybody's had a great holiday. Let me know in the chat, did you guys get anything crazy for Black Friday? I bought an A1 mini 3D printer, so you're going to see that on the show here in the future. Just because that technology is so amazing that they've come up with. So, is there any technology you guys picked up? Let's see. So here we go. This is the SFX version. I'm going to go ahead and install the outer shroud. So I'm basically got two adapters here to put this small of a PSU in. And that's the funny thing is you don't technically need a PSU this small. It just happens to support both. Let me do that. Just putting these screws in. Ooh, okay. Blind Tech is getting some power stuff. He's going to get an 8-outlet strip. Have you thought about the USB or non-USB? That to me is always the question, right? Do I go with the USB power strips? I know that that's a big to do right now, whether or not you use those. Okay, so to sink these ones down, especially this first time in this PC, I'm going to use the larger screwdrivers. I'm basically making threads here. Blind Tech's looking for some cases. It says 3 USB ports to power his studio lights. Man, that's a great idea. I'm embarrassed to say, but I have a 22-port surge strip with 6 USBs. It's like the main core that turns the whole studio on and off. And that's absolutely for that reason, because a lot of stuff we use is USB. So lots of cool stuff going on. That is from Blind Tech, says right here, 3 USB ports, USB powered studio lights. Circuit Rewinds checking in, says, I built a 12U rack for my family and as expected, missing components. So Black Friday was about getting those missing items. Yeah, It's kind of tough when you're missing something as important as the power supply. And you know what? This power supply is so short. Let me show you guys on the side view here. This power supply is so short. You'll see it when I put it in here. It completely missed the fan. Let's see if you guys can see that. So there's the fan right there. It completely misses it, and it almost stops before it. So we're going to have great airflow. It's actually going to be flowing by the cables more than anything. So I like the idea. This just happened to turn out to be the perfect PSU for this type of build that we're doing today. Very cool. I love it when a plan comes together, if even by accident. I'll give it that. So I'm just putting this back real quick. And I'm just bringing this up so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I'm putting these outer screws. So there's two adapters here. So it's a really small power supply, but same efficiency as the larger power supplies, which is pretty cool. It just happens to have two adapters. So it's going to work absolutely the same exact way. And I got the fan orientation correct. I have all of the covers that I need. Perfect. On this part of the build then starts to go a lot faster. It took a little bit to get to this point, but then we get to start to move quicker. I'm grabbing the other thing I like about this thermal take. You can see that the actual fan cover on the bottom is got a framed cage. So it's not like the flimsier ones. The one on the back is a lot flimsier, you'll see. And I'm going to leave this one off. It does have a fan built into the back, it looks like, also. And so we'll just have to make sure we have enough headers to plug all those in. And so there we go. Next up is the motherboard. So we get to put the motherboard in here. Looks like this cover comes out. Interesting. So it has the standard ITX standoffs, but it looks like this whole tray, let me get you guys on the top down so maybe you can see this a little better. This whole tray can come out. We're not necessarily going to take that out, but let me show you a little bit of what this is going to start to look like. So something like this. Now I got to figure out if I can put the tubes sideways. It'll look like that. Okay, so we're coming together. I like this so far. What I want to do is find out what size thread the standoffs use in here. It should be fine thread on most of these, but I want to double check. Nope, it is going to be a coarse thread standoff. So now we know. Double check that because I just checked the one hole. Yes, that's threading in nicely. Okay, so we're going to take the motherboard, redo our alignment here. What I love about this is it has pretty much everything ready to go. I'm going to use the longer screwdriver here. I would use the phalanx on this part, but sometimes I like to be sitting back and up and aligning. And I love this. It's actually kind of funny. It's a Husky. You can see here, super long screwdriver. I use this to reach way down into cases and put screws in, and I've never had an objection. But it can get tedious if you're doing a ton of screws. I've built a lot of HPs that I think they get paid by the number of screws they sell you in those HPs. And so that's the way those work. Okay, so those are in. Now we're going to have to address the CPU fan on the top here. So looks like there's some room in the top. I don't want it to hit our Eleanor. So let me see if I can bring you guys on the side here to look at this. Okay, so that's where we're looking right now. That's the CPU fan right there. That's the tower. Now I can put it up this way. And actually, I like that the best right now. So I can slide it in this way. It's still going to look really good. You're going to see it. And the lines are going to drape down. Just naturally drape down and come back up. So that looks really slick there. I'm going to get some larger thread. And I'll put the fan in. There's one to hold it in, and I'm going to get one more of the coarse thread. And then we'll start to kind of run wires and do things. Perfect. Okay, so what do you guys think there? That's the look that we're basically getting here on it. It's got that reflective. What that means is that these hoses are going to run right up next to the side panel. Let me see which is which. This is interesting. So that's the outside. This is the other side. So let me get the cables in. So it's going to look something like that. So if you look from the front, the cables are going to run right up along that glass. I think that's going to look really sharp. I like that look. I think it's out of the way. I think once I get all my cables hidden, it's going to have a real clear view to the bottom, which is what we want. And then we're going to put our Eleanor down here. So we'll figure out how to do that. Perfect. So excellent. Just taking a quick look at the chat. So John, tell me how you get your power cut. When my PC is off, then my smart monitor and soundbar turn itself off. No video signal, especially when working on maintenance of my personal system. So I don't get them. Oh, I got you. Yeah, so when the power turns off, yeah. So you want to keep those USBs. I got you. That's important too. So now I'm going to attach all of the I/O. So this is coming from the top of the case. This is going to be your power switches, your lights, your other stuff. And this case, again, it feels pretty dainty, pretty small, but it actually has an enormous amount of room to run cables and wires through. The GPU is a little bit congested over here. I'm trying to see, there's a little bit of a lineup here or some congestion right when you come down this backside. I'll show you here. So there we go. So I'm going to go out this back hole. And that's going to get right about where the HDMI cable comes in. So I'll just let the buyer know, hey, your HDMI cable's in there. It's underneath. This is the USB 3. And then there is another header here for HD audio. So overall, again, all of this stuff is hidden. That's what's going to look really trick about this when it's all done. And then I'll show you here. That's how the motherboard I/O looks like. So you can see all of the I/O ports. The cables here are going to be a little bit encroaching on the GPU, which we could actually put in now. There's no reason not to. Oh, you know what? There is a reason not to. I got to run all these cables. I forgot about that. So I'm going to do this. You guys will get to see me on the top down running these cables. And I want to route them the shortest route possible. And I'm going to put the hardest ones in first. So the hardest ones for me are going to be the power LED, reset switch, HDD LEDs. I happen to know these by memory, but don't quiz me on them. So if I do this right, that should be the HDD. This one, power switch, is the second row over. Pins 3 and 4 from the left. And if I do this right, I can back these up pretty tight so they won't stick out too far. That's another neat thing about this case is when it's all put together, this is kind of a showpiece case. It's really showing off your technology. I don't know if I would ever do one of these without an AIO in it, just because it looks so clean with one. There we go. So I just hooked up all 4 of the power switch connectors, HDD, LEDs, and everything. And I'm going to get those nice and tight here, kind of flex the cables while I have them. There's the HD audio, which we're going to find where that is on the motherboard next. And this one's kind of cool because HD audio always looks the same. It has this little notch out in it, so you can find that pretty quickly on a motherboard. Like so, I'm going to try to see if I can hide this behind underneath the GPU. Hopefully that doesn't get us into trouble, but I just want to make the cables look as tight as possible here. We're going to do the USB-C. So we'll bring that down. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm going into the USB-C port, which is nice. Come on, baby. This is a omnidirectional cable, but I would really rather it was facing the other way. So I got to rotate the whole cable all the way up here to get this in right. There we go. Those are in. I saw a USB Type 3 next, which I can roll in. I do like this little cable gland where they come in at. Looks like this is going to have to get some twist in its cable. And then this has a ton of I/O right on the front. That is a nice thing actually to have. So even though you're going to have the I/O mostly covered on the inside behind that shield, the I/O here is mostly accessible right on the front top. So if you want to stick a USB stick in or a Windows installer stick or anything, you can do that. Okay, I like the way that looks. Let me know in the chat what you guys think. How does that look for cabling? Ignore all these out the back here, but we've got those running down pretty slick here. So now I'm going to address the fan cabling again. I want to check. I have a box. Now, I don't know if you guys, the other PC builders on here, do this, but I happen just to have an entire box of motherboard goodies. So these are, if I get a fan or a PCB or from Circuit Rewind, a PCB like this one, it goes in this box of goodies only because you never know when you need an RGB adapter. This one is an addressable RGB. But what I'm looking for, there is a Wi-Fi, which we're going to need later. But I'm looking for an RGB splitter. And sometimes I get lucky and I find an addressable RGB. There's a whole controller. So I kind of want to avoid sticking a whole controller in this one. There's another RGB. There's a 3.0 to a 2.0. Kind of want to avoid, if I can help it, any excess in there. Did I see fire hazard 1? Yes, that was. You told me it was a fire hazard and not to plug it in, so I ignored that PCB you sent me. But it was a good idea at the time, right? That's what they all say, right? And it looked like a good idea at the time. Just looking at the I/O, so that won't help us on this one. I'm thinking, yeah, this is a really small addressable RGB header, and that can be useful if you're doing a build and the motherboard doesn't have addressable RGB. But I'm just looking to see if I have one with multiple outputs. And I don't. And I don't think this motherboard has more than one output. So we're going to have to go into the box, and we'll do that. There's a fan splitter, but I don't know if addressable RGB can be split like that. There's all of my adapters. So nothing there. Okay. Also have a vertical mount GPU adapter here, just in case. I'll check one last place over here on the side. I usually keep some extras. Those are all audio and nothing. Okay. So we are going to have to use that one breakout, and I'll see where I can hide it for the addressable RGB, because I don't think this board has more than one. I'm going to double check one more time. Oh, you know what? I see one more addressable RGB. It's on the bottom side, but that's all I need to sync. So what I can do is I can take either the one from the pump, whatever looks cleanest. I'm going to run all these cables out the side here and behind the case, and then I can attach them to the back side of the case. So I think that's going to work. But I have one underneath the GPU. There's an additional RGB header. So I'm going to run this down the side hole here. This was designed for that. Run this over this way. Up the side hole. It was down designed for that. And please tell me there's just enough room to get this on there. SP diff. And I want to double check that that is addressable RGB. You know what? It doesn't have the right color, so I don't know if I want to do that. I don't think that is an addressable RGB. So we'll skip that for now. I'm not going to risk that one, just in case. So we'll do it the old way. So I'm going to put in the SATA to the back of the motherboard, or the back of the PSU. And we have a ton of space down here, so I'm going to attach this power cable. The other thing is fan headers. I don't know how many fan headers I actually have. There's 2 additional factory fans, so this is going to have plenty of power, but I don't know if I actually have more PWM headers. We only have 1 chassis header on this thing, so I think I'm going to need a breakout for that anyway. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of science here to get all these doing. I'm going to do that after the show, but for now I want to show you guys what it looks like. So I am going to use this controller, and we're going to put it on the chassis line. So the CPU is going to have its own, and I'm not going to address that one, but I'm going to use this so I can power the remaining chassis headers and do the RGB together. So we're going to have addressable RGB. So I can do the 1 addressable RGB header. Looking real quick here. If you're just joining, this is John the Net Guy. I am building Eleanor. She is the PC that I could never seem to get to run. I had one that I built on Java and sold it, and this PC was the bane of my existence. It was a challenge, and that's why I call it the Eleanor project. But the buyer has already purchased this PC, so I am committed. I have to deliver on this commitment. But it's going to be a great looking machine. That's the one thing I love about this Thermaltake Tower case, is it's a great looking case. You can't deny that. I'm going to get this chassis connector over. How did I get that plugged in without going through the back? That's interesting. Okay. So we're going to hide the addressable RGB controller down below in the bottom basement of this PC case. So I'm also going to use some twist ties here in just a second to make my life easier in doing this cable routing and management, because this is one of those cases where you have a lot of cable room, but if you have a cable routed incorrectly, everybody's going to know. There's that nobody's going to know. No, this one, everybody sees every cable that you've routed on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these cables. I'm going to try to make them as tight as I can. I don't know if I even like that being there. I think I might just run. Yeah, I'm going to run this all the way over. And there is a zip tie spot up top here, so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm actually trying to do a lot of cable management as I go. I don't normally do this much cable management on a live stream just because it's kind of boring. Sorry, guys. But because this is going to be such an elaborate looking build, Zach's Tech Turf would kill me if I did not do the aesthetics. To him, aesthetics are everything. He'd probably take a 386 if you could put RGB on it and some vinyl stickers over an ugly case. There we go. You know what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to pull this up and through. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a twist tie through one of these zip tie holes. I like to use twist ties first when I do stuff, and then we'll follow up with zip ties later. So once we get all the controllers and everything, then I can zip tie it. If you're shipping PCs, it can be a mess to get all of this right. So just putting this in. There we go. And what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to hide 2 wires. I did all that work here. You'll see it over here. I'm using a twist tie through the top, and I'm just trying to hide 2 wires. And once I have those wires hidden and out of the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist tie the rest of these wires together that come through this hole. So when the case is completely done, you won't really see these. These are all going to kind of hide. And I'm actually going to use a zip tie here just because I need the pressure. And run that through. Yeah, cable management takes a ton of time, but the results are undeniable when you see a machine that's done really, really well. Okay, so there we go. So that part's done. All of the motherboard cabling is done. We're going to have to get creative about that for sure. I do have my addressable RGB connectors now for the fans and the pump, and I can run that over here. I'm going to get these drawn down through the bottom. And let's find some RGB headers. Light 5, light 1, light 2. So let's do these to light 1. And where's the other guy? This one to light 2. You know what? I could actually probably stick this, when this is all done, I could probably stick this right on top of the power supply area, and there's just going to be enough room that nobody's going to see it. I think that's going to work out really good, and I'll be able to get access to it. Okay, perfect. Just got that down there. This is the board I was just working on, and I need to put it onto one of the SATA connectors for power. That's going to power the additional fans that are in the case. So that's this connector here. So it is a PWM fan controller, which is pretty cool. But these are not PWM fans. Let me see here. So that one goes like so. Okay, perfect. That's the fan there. Top fan is already connected to the CPU header. We're ready to drop a GPU and then fire this thing up. And I think we're going to be going on to Windows and all the greatness that is after that. So thank you guys for tuning in here. I know it's a little bit long of a stream here, trying to get all of this done in one day. I got to deliver this machine. I got to work out when we're exactly going to meet up for the buyer. But so far, it's been going good. We're going to see how this GPU fits in here. This CPU is kind of cool in this whole ITX board. Give me 1 second. So we're going to put this GPU in. This is the PNY that I was talking about. So right there, that's the PNY 4060 going down. And I've run a cable underneath the GPU over, so we're hiding it. There we go. That's that audio cable from the front of the motherboard. There we go. That was a little interesting to get seated, but it is seated all the way down. I checked that. This is, for cases, as far as cases go, this is kind of a springy one. There we go. Now this is funny. This is actually be the time where I need to put that cover on. I might do this a little backwards here. So as I was telling you before, there's some vanity covers that you can run right here that will block off this GPU. This is the nice thing about these GPUs. When you see them from the front, they look so clean. I can run the power cable for it right up here, and I can block off with one of these plates over here. I put those plates in there. There's my vanity plates. I can block off the bottom side so you don't actually see it. But to do that, let me see if I can sneak it in here with the GPU in. Oh, I could. There we go. So you can see, if you look real careful now, down here, I put that block off cover, so you don't have to have a full length GPU. But if you do have a 3-fan GPU, it'll go all the way down here into the basement. So now I got to figure out how to snake that CPU power connector up. I see that over here. Okay. Get you guys back to see the wide angle here, because there's a lot of cable routing we're doing. What is the like the biggest build? Let me know in the chat what the biggest build you've ever made is, as far as a PC. Have you built anything in the like ETX, ATX? You know, what's your go-to as far as builds? I'd be kind of interested in hearing about that. If you've normally done MATX, that's normal. That's fine. But I'm just curious what kind of builds people are doing on here. So PCI Express power connector coming through. And we're going to connect our GPU up here in just a second. Give it that necessary power to play all the cool games this thing's going to play. I think this would also be a really cool sim racing rig. That's one of the things that I'll have to talk to the buyer about and see, because he's got a TV that this is actually going to go with, which is kind of cool. I love that idea for a game room. Just use your big monster television as a big monitor, especially on a nice looking build like this. Okay, here we go. Got my GPU power. Now I can run the rest of my power from my motherboard and CPU and all the other stuff I've neglected at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those and run them up. Okay. Yeah, they make this challenging. This is the hard part of here, running power for power supply up to the various devices. In this case, there are definitely routes to run everything. You almost need like a fish tape, it feels like sometimes. It's different than those MATX cases, right? Because you always have a real easy line usually right up here. I'm going to the CPU optional right here on the side. It's usually pretty easy on most cases. This one, you got to do some finagling. Okay, that's perfect. I love the look of that one here. Smallest PC, Jonathan Talks Hardware coming in, or Blind Tech is his rename. Smallest PC is a micro ATX. Biggest is an ATX. Might do an ITX sometime. Well, this, you've seen, Jonathan, what's involved in an ITX build. As Paris Hilton once said, it's not rocket surgery. She was always good for a laugh. But no, it's not the impossible to build these. It's just can add some complexity sometimes. Let's put it that way. That's the nice way to put it, I think. So you just have to do a little bit more planning. I'm running my addressable RGB to the plug-in controller here. We are almost ready to fire this up. I'm missing a power supply main ATX connector and covers and a few other little things, doodads like that. But we're really, really close to go time here. So this is the power supply connector I'm running in right now. So I'm going to run that up the side here. Oh my goodness. This is going to be a challenge because this one's got to make like a 90-degree turn. Come out the hole here and then into the power supply connector. So, wow, this is going to be, I wish this thing was about 4 inches longer. Let's put it that way. And don't clip that, please. So, oh, yeah. I'm going to see that tomorrow on Twitter. Here we go. I'll show you what I was dealing with. I'm getting this power supply ATX connector, and it is just a bear because I got to get it through this and then down. But my goodness, is this thing going to look clean? The biggest cables you're going to see are actually these. And I wish, gosh, I may even someday get a cable extension for this GPU cable and just hide it, or maybe do something like that to hide it. Let me see if I can temporarily zip tie this through the fan shroud. I like to do that to positively hold the wires to the GPU. So I'm going to just run this through. I'm running a zip tie up and through. Zip ties are your cable management friend. But this is going to be temporary to kind of hold this until I remap all the wiring. Okay. Okay, perfect. So that GPU is plugged in. It's got power. It's bedded in the motherboard. Okay, we're not going to have to do any more routing around here, so I am going to peel the beautiful Dracenea cover for the Infinity fan. I don't want to touch it with my hands, but there's a little bit of mark there that I could clean up. So there is the CPU all done up. I'm actually able to block off a lot of this. I'm going to see it start up, and then we'll start to hide some more of these cables. Let's do it that way. I need to run this cable down and underneath. And I love the idea of putting Eleanor in here. Put a Mustang, Shelby GT Mustang in there. I love it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I do think that I'm going to have to zip tie some cables back so they stay out of this lower fan. So far, so good. But I just want to make sure that nobody gets excited and pops in there. So we're going to go ahead and plug this thing in now that I think I've got everything run where it needs to be. This is such a weird layout. So the networking goes up top along with the HDMI to the GPU, and the power goes in the bottom. So it's a little backwards. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and then I'm going to hit the power switch. And we're going to get our first look at the Dracenea AIO. This is on Eleanor, the T100. Oh, she's looking great. She's in the blue phase here, kind of going through the addressable RGB. It's going through its phases here. I'm going to put the side covers on just because I've got enough room to. And I want to let you guys see what this is going to look like basically put together. I'm not going to peel the sides. That is for the final owner to do when I deliver the machine. It's kind of sad because I really want to take some really nice pictures of this one. Maybe I'll do it when we're delivering. But you put these side covers on now. That's the beauty of it. So this is the front cover. Now that's going to reflect a ton, but you can see what this is starting to look like, right? Gorgeous machine. You've got that GeForce GPU sticking out there. I'm actually going to take that one off because I want to add real quick. Looking good. I'm going to add that lower vanity cover because we don't have a super long CPU here, and that's okay, or a super long GPU. This is a 4060. So like I said, we were actually going back and forth, the buyer and I, and saying, do we want a 4060? Do we want to do something different when it came to the gaming capability of this? And a 4060 is equivalent. We did some YouTube research and looking. The 4060 should be identically equivalent to a 2080. So, you know, a card that was a flagship card before, back in the day, is now something that you can get for under $300. Now, a 2080 would also look really good in here. So there is the look of it. So far, she's looking good. And you know what? It posted. So we did post for a second time now that we're all built in. Hard drive still looks good. So we made it to the second phase here. I'm going to show you the interesting and the hard part. This is this rack I was telling you about. This is the top. So I can actually insert the top with everything going. So that's what it's going to look like, basically. And I'll get you out on the wide camera so you can see it. So that's what the PC looks like. Gorgeous looking PC. They got the addressable RGB fan there. Now, technically, where did I put that fan controller? I can hit a button here once I start this up. There it is. And I can fix the RGB to specific colors I want, like red. Or can I? I can turn it off, turn it on. Red, green, blue. Come on, blue. So I can control those. I can do an auto mode, so that's a rainbow effect basically. It always looks so much better though on this camera for some reason, and it will look better if I didn't have that front glass in there. But that's the RGB. Let's go back out to auto. I like that. Yeah, that lights up the inside much more. Sorry for all the reflections here. We have the case on and the covers. That's what happened with the 120 AIO. The pipes come in on the side here now. It does have, if you could see up close, that would be tough, but it has an infinity mirror effect going on that 120 millimeter Dracenea. So I'm going to take a quick look at the chat now, and we'll see what else people want to do. I have a Windows 11 boot up USB right here that I'm going to install. I'm looking for one other cover. I'm not covering the back yet. The bottom fan is working great. top CPU fan, almost no fan motion out of that one yet. That's another interesting thing, is because I think it was going at 500 RPM is what we saw. Okay, where did I put that cover? There's the I/O cover. So top I/O cover goes like this. It's not bolted down yet, but I just wanted to show you. To zoom out. So this is what all that I/O looks like when it's done. That's, you've got that color through the fan blades. There's the motherboard. We're going to put this in, and you just pop it down, and that's the Tower T100 case. There you go. And the I/O comes out the back. You put the I/O cover or the back plate cover. You can do that. I can actually take and I can plug into the top mounted I/O. If I do it right, USB-A is like you put it in backwards, you flip it over, it's backwards, and then you put it in the same way, and then it works, right? Isn't that how the trick goes? Like you have to put it in backwards twice, and then you go back to your normal way, and it was fine. So, here we go. I'm just going to quickly boot into Windows with this boot, and we'll start an install. And then I think that's going to be it. And then I'm going to put this down to the side, and I think I'm going to grab our View Edge monitor. I'm going to have to put everything, all of our extra connectors here away for a little bit. Double checking. I got one of those in there. I'll add more. And then we're going to check out that View Edge monitor. We had one extra item here. Heck, I can get this thing installing Windows. Windows installs so fast now, doesn't it? There we go. Local settings. Chuck's checking in, says, awesome. Absolutely. I love it when a plan comes together. So we got it. We're going to install Windows 11 on my PC. We're going to delete everything that it thinks was on that. And I'm going to say I don't have a product key now because we're going to get one online later. That was pretty good. We are at under 2 hours. We got the whole machine basically built. We did our cable management start to finish. So not that PC building is a quick operation, but in this case, it actually went pretty quick. Looking slick, man, coming from PC Tech Hustle. Good praise coming from another very popular PC builder. So putting some of these away, and then we're going to get that View Edge monitor out now that we've got this. What kind of product key? I always go Pro. Let's see. Do we need Pro? I'm going to go Pro. I always do that, even though I know it's probably no different for a home user, but I just like to have the top of the line, you know? If I'm going to sell a machine, why not give it Pro? And I think the only difference on Pro is workgroup capability, right? But or the domain join ability, but who knows? Maybe that's the old ways. So if you're just tuning in, we built an entire PC in under 2 hours here. We're going to get into the partitioning. What I usually do, looks like it's got that, my USB and unallocated space. So we're going to do the 2 terabytes. I usually delete everything. Debloated Windows 11 is a fantastic question. No, this is actually just what I downloaded from Microsoft today. I downloaded it right when the show was starting because I realized that I didn't have a current Windows 11 for some reason. This installer is different than what I'm used to. So yeah, this is definitely a little bit changed or improved, I would say. So I'm putting all of our extras to the side here. And then hopefully by the time Windows is installed here in just a second, we're going to get to unbox that monitor. And then we'll be able to see what that monitor looks like on the brand new machine. So overall, pretty good. And yeah, look at that. There's line text checking in, says, looks different than I remember in doing an install of Windows 11. It absolutely does. I would say that this is definitely a different install experience. You know what I'm going to do? Just before I forget and try to lift this thing up by these top screws, I'm going to put those 4 top screws down real quick. And that is going to lock this top I/O down. And then I'll come back and I'm going to have to do a little more cable management. You know, I got a couple things I want to tune up. I want to make sure that the push-pull fans are working exact. I'll do kind of my burn-in test. We've got some performance testing we do. So building a machine is not super fast in 2 hours and you get paid. You have a lot more still to do. I got to deliver this thing. There we go. Yeah, that Windows 11 install is so fast nowadays. It's pretty amazing when you think about what it's doing that quickly. And I did not hook the back fan up here on this case yet, and that's another thing I'll have to do if we want it. There's a lot of cables running through the back here, and the back side of the motherboard doesn't get hot at all, so we get a little bit of excess fan. Looks like. She's gone dark on me. Oh, she's rebooting. Hopefully that's a planned reboot, not the cable I touched. Yeah, much faster than 10, Jonathan says in the chat. And he says, maybe I should get a latest W11 for my inventory. I should do a show on how to do that, how to download the Windows 10. Easiest thing, Google Windows Media Creation Tool, and that's the best way to do it if you're just going to build yourself a USB key for future installs. Wonderful. Awesome. So this thing is starting back up in Windows. So what I'm going to do to make a little bit of room here, get a little decluttering going on, I'm going to get this View Edge monitor out, and we're going to see if it reaches the hype. So these things are very affordable. And by affordable, I mean under $100 pretty much for the whole lot. And on Black Friday, they're even cheaper. So, you know, if you're looking for something that is affordable, that you can upgrade your monitor to, you're looking for something with high refresh rate, this is 180. I also, do I have my standard test? I usually have a USB. There it is. Whew. I have a USB key that I put all my software on for testing machines, brand new machines. It has Cinebench. It has all that stuff. Some people do use PCI Express cards and have it all preloaded and drivers and everything. I just like to use this. So I'm going to move this off to the side and floor area. And then we will proceed with our unbox of our View Edge monitor. Let's see if I can do this without unplugging the machine inadvertently. That will be the test. So I'm going to bring this down. I set it on the ground. Cables did reach. It's still running. And then I'm going to bring our View Edge monitor up. Now I'm going to have to make it sound like this is a brand new review, because that's what I do when I reuse this content. So I'm actually going to take this content that we're going to build right now together. We're going to make a monitor review video for Amazon. So it is just that easy. But I'm actually going to do a lot more testing of this one. I do need to cover up the barcode, or digitally obscure the barcode for Amazon rules. So we're going to do in a 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Amazon, this is John. We're taking a look at the View Edge CS27FK. It's a 27-inch 1080p monitor. It boasts 180 hertz refresh rate, and it is an incredibly budget, value conscious monitor. We're gonna unbox it today and see if it lives up to the hype. So that's how you record an intro, by the way. Now my editor takes that and he clips out my little mistake in there. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can get you on the top down here while I open this. It's very nondescript packaging. That's the one thing I'll say. Like Scepter monitors definitely have more logos and art on their packaging, but you know, it's what matters is what's in the panel, right? I would take a superior panel over fancy packaging, I guess. There we go. Okay, all the accessories look to be on the top. It's getting a little bound up there. Okay, so let's see what it comes with. Do a live unbox. So it's going to have some very small, very thin instructions. It's going to talk about how to set up the base for this. I've seen this style before with HPs where it's a click-in base, so it's all plastic, and then this slides up and then gets screwed in possibly. It is going to be a AC adapter powered monitor with a US plug. It's non-removable, so it's just US only. 12 volts, 3 amps. Now, the one advantage I would say about 12 volts is if you want to use this in an RV or camper or other van life situation, you absolutely can, which is cool. Plug this into our desk. This is the base. We're going to see about adjustability here in a little bit. It looks like it does have tilt. And this one is looking like it's going to lock in and push. So if you get this and just push hard, it should snap in. So there's the base. So far, really easy to set up. Now, the big question is, what kind of cable did they provide us? And here we go. We've got the, oh, nice. So it's an HDMI cable. I'll see about the range. I like to do a test. All cables that come in here get the Armstrong test. It's about 5 feet in total length for this cable. So if you're wondering how long the HDMI that's included is, about 5 feet. Okay, so the monitor comes with, it looks like a wrap around it. You know what so far is interesting is I have not seen any screws. So it has VESA mounting. This looks to be 75, so it's the smaller of the mounting styles, which can actually be really good. Labeling is not very, transparent here. It's got HDMI and DisplayPort. So 2 HDMI and a DisplayPort, audio for headphones, and a DC input. Now, to get this to go in, you're just going to slide this up. If I've done this right, so I have to pass it and then push. Let's get to the edge, and there we go. So that's snapped, and you can see there's that little tiny push button. That's to unlatch it. So far, really easy to set up, but again, very budget conscious. No screws to put in. Let's see, stability. You can decide on that. It does have tilt forward and back. The base, this is going to be a small issue, but there's enough flex in the base, even though I have it completely snapped in, that this monitor will have some forward and back tilt. So that, again, probably worth investing in a monitor arm eventually if you're going to get a monitor like this. But the weight on it, very lightweight. So probably one of the lightest panels I picked up. Let's take a look at the thickness in the back. So you can see, very thin panel. They're just getting so much thinner. Even a budget panel these days is thin, and then it has very small bezels. So what I'm going to do is plug it in, and we're going to plug it into our brand new gaming PC that we just built. And we're going to see how it performs. I'm just getting the DC plug aligned right. Yeah, very light monitor. As soon as I'm pushing these cables in, it is literally pushing the whole monitor over. I'm going to bring this PC all the way back up. There we go. So there's the View Edge monitor with the PC that we just finished building. And we're going to plug it into the HDMI port. Now we're going to see if it has an auto start or auto on function. Or the controls are on the bottom corner of it. I'm going to hit what I think would be power. So now we have a View Edge logo. And there's my standard Windows installer. So far my studio lights are all calibrated the same, but that means it's going to be a very bright screen. So brightness, not a problem. On this monitor, you can see that's adjusted a little bit better. We got to install our Windows before we can do anything. Standard keyboard layout. Let's get you connected. Install driver. It wants me to install a driver to continue using your device. Install a network adapter, download it from manufacturer. That's not good. Control-Shift F3 still work? Yes, it does. We're going to bypass that whole operation. We have our software local, so we're going to do that. And we're getting the pre-boot environment here on Windows, and we're going to run a couple little quick tests. It's interesting that that motherboard wants a network driver, even though I'm plugged in, and I still have a blinky light, and I also have Wi-Fi. So I'm surprised that it doesn't want to do either of those, but we'll see. I'm actually going to install the Wi-Fi antenna just to see if that was part of it. The motherboard comes preloaded with a LAN driver to help you connect to the internet. Do you want to do that? Yeah, it's scary, but yes. So we're going to do that. Yes. So we're just installing. It's just connecting right now. It's installing Armor Crate, which is going to let us control that RGB, which will be nice. And then I'm going to get the Wi-Fi installed also here. So if you're just tuning in, we are building Eleanor. So far, so good. I'm going to install, I think, superposition just to test the graphics on this monitor. I will have to send this monitor through my whole litany of calibration and other tests just to see the color accuracy. We'll also test the UFO, the ghosting test. I just want to see how the ghosting looks on it right away. That would be one other thing we can do without installing much software. And I'm going to put the Wi-Fi in on this PC that we just finished building. So this is a brand new computer we're setting up for the first time. It looks like that internet driver works. So there was a motherboard-based network driver. Have you guys seen that before? That is the first time I've ever had Windows install a LAN driver from the motherboard. Maybe I'm just new here, but that seems awkward to me to have software embedded in the motherboard that Windows can use. Is that sketchy or is that cool? I don't know. You let me know what you think about that. And we're just installing the rest of Armor Crate here. I'm going to go ahead and put my other USB in, and we're going to get all of our other softwares ready to go. While it does that, and actually I can take out the Windows install USB because we don't need that anymore. Just taking a look at the chat. Oh boy, I got to set the background of the PC as Eleanor. That's actually a great idea. The only drawback of doing that right now is Windows has to be registered, I think, for you to customize the background. Can I do that? Let's go to the background. Personalization. You need to activate Windows before I can do that. Now, can I do the background? No, activate now. Okay, I have to go through the activation process. That's a wonderful idea, though, but I think I will set that before the machine gets delivered. I will set the background to Eleanor. Very cool. Never used Wi-Fi. Do OOBE bypass NRO when you get to Windows setup. Yeah, perfect. Elmas says, Gigabyte has it. I am not a fan. Yeah, that's kind of sketchy to have software that's low-level drivers inside your motherboard. How do they protect that from getting tampered with? Lock it out as Eleanor. Love it. I love it. You can download the picture and right-click as set as background, which bypasses the activation. Okay, now I have to try that. Start without your data. No, don't bring anything over. Come on. No. Confirm and start browsing. Okay, and finish. Okay, so Eleanor 67 Shelby GT500. Let's get the actual Eleanor. Do we see? That one looks like her from the movie. Oh, I clicked that one from the movie, and then now it's... Oh, which one is it? That's the Eleanor edition. Greatest car ever. Carthrottle.com, something or other. Well, let's go back to this one and then say open image in new tab. And right click, can I set as background? Share, screenshot, inspect, save image as, copy image as. Let's save it to downloads, save, open. And are you thinking that we can do this from up here? Set as background. You got to be kidding. Oh, Jonathan, in with the trick. Look at that. Okay, now I got this Gigabyte window in the way. You know what? It's scaled. It's not quite the right size, but you can see we've got Eleanor in the background here. Not bad. Now, view angle, I can see this already on this, so you can see the shift there. I want to double check. You know, there is a little bit of color shift on the monitor. So you see how you can see it at an angle there? It might just be the brightness on that monitor. So if I come over here, hide this out of the way, and then I turn it sideways, it's getting a little darker, but the color shift's not bad. That's what I was worried about. Plenty good enough for a Chevy guy. There you go. Oh, he was into it. Hacked it. Look at that hack. Jonathan knows the tricks here. Only when the pick is downloaded to the PC, he says, yeah, you got this, man. Make the taskbar black. Okay, now, I don't know how much customizing I want to do on this taskbar. Taskbar behaviors, auto hide. I could do the auto hide. Oh, now we're talking. So then it does auto hide. So that's getting a little bit better. I think we're coming along. What I'm going to do real quick, though, is I want to run superposition on this, or something graphical that I know what it looks like, just so that I can see. Desktop, I need to get to the survivor. That is my USB. I'm going to copy. I've got tools, drivers, downloads. I'm going to copy this, put it on the desktop over here. And usually before I'm actually doing real benchmarks, I'm going to test this thing right out to the limits on the edges. So far, let's take a look at the monitor. I'm looking for dead pixels, pixel pitch. It is a 1080 27, so you will see pixels if you're right up close. But color, you know, again, I don't know exactly what this image is supposed to look like. You know, if you were playing a game or something that you do a lot, you would be able to see that much quicker. So we'll see as we get into some of the tests on there as well. I'm going to go ahead and check my display settings. One thing that you want to do when you have a high refresh rate monitor like this and a GPU, well, one, you want to put a driver in for it. But there is advanced display settings. Do we have it? Generic PNP monitor. So it's showing 1080p, standard range. I want to go into advanced and set the refresh rate. So it's not letting me do that yet. I think that's because we don't have the drivers installed for this graphics card. So we're going to have to install those. It does think that it's installing Armory Crate. I'm going to close that Armory Crate download because we don't need that. Survivor, drivers. That is NVIDIA. Okay, so I have NVIDIA drivers I can put on the machine real quick. Hopefully that install goes well. We are going for a record stream tonight here. We did an entire PC build. We built Eleanor. We built the PC they said couldn't be done again. I did prove that it wasn't me as a PC builder. So there it is with the 120 millimeter fan in the Tower 100 case. Very good looking case. He's got a little tiny piece of styrofoam there. Get that out of there. But we built that entire machine tonight. We're taking a look at the View Edge monitor with it. So this is a 27-inch monitor. I'm going to just put the NVIDIA driver on here, and we're going to see. And then I think we're going to be wrapped. I think this was a successful install. It did exactly what I wanted and what I was going for today, which was to take a look at this monitor, get this PC built the way we needed it, and we'll go from there. So taking a look at the chat. Nothing new in the chat here. I am going to visit the Amazon page for this monitor real quick, just so you guys can see real quick what it looks like. Net guy, we want to go to our Amazon URL that usually was going around the bottom here. So I'm going to bring up the Amazon page. We're going to go over here real quick so you guys can see me. And I'm going to go down to the items that we were looking at today. These are all the parts that went into the machine. This is the View Edge gaming monitor. It's had some pretty interesting reviews. I've seen other couple creators that have used it. I really want to get my calibrator onto it. It has a 180 hertz gaming mode, essentially, and an $89 price tag right now, 40% off for Black Friday. So that's hard to disagree with. I would say that the stand is probably something just right away I can tell you that's not something I really like. 83% of NTSC is not bad, and 110 of sRGB isn't bad if it tests out like that. Does have speakers. I do want to check the menu system on it. So I just hit what I thought was the menu button. And oh, now it just found my audio from my speakers, but it didn't bring up the menu button. So enter brings up, okay, that's volume. So it does have speakers. I'm just checking that out right now. But I was hoping that if I hit menu, it would bring up an on-screen display. I just have to push it really hard. Okay, so on-screen display, not a ton to write home about here. Sorry, I'll get you guys so you can see it. There's the OSD. And the monitor, you can see it's kind of shaky because, again, that stand is so small. Warm color temperature, I'm going to have to go look and fix that. It does have a low blue light mode. It has saturation control, sharpness control. Brightness is at 80 right now. I'm going to go try to use the enter here. Okay, so enter is actually exit. Menu is enter. Wow, okay, that's going to take some getting used to. I do like Scepter's joystick-based navigation. So you're dealing with a nav system here that's, you know, kind of from 2018, 2016 or older. And then the exit button is actually not the enter. I think that's all we want here for these. So do I hit E to exit? There we go. I'm going to restart the computer, and then we're going to run superposition or something else similar to that. There we go. Also a 27-1440 for 99 bucks. Okay, how did I miss that? So this is the View Edge one. We're going to look at the Quad HD. So they got a curved 1080. Oh, you weren't kidding. They have a Quad HD that they're offering for 99 bucks here on a Black Friday deal. 19% claims. So this would be essentially this monitor at 75 hertz with an IPS panel. So the one we're looking at today is the $89. I'm guessing this is, oh, it is an IPS. It says with HDR10 support, but to really do HDR10, you have to have a peak brightness that is way higher than most. So I'm going to go quickly into the display settings here on this because I want to change the advanced display settings and set the refresh rate. So I want to give it the 180 hertz. So I just switched to that. I'm on an HDMI input. Maybe it requires DisplayPort, but let's see. Looks like it's allowing it. Learn more about HDR certification not found. So it's saying it doesn't find the certification on this for true HDR. But let's go ahead and we're going to run something graphical. And where is superposition? That's something pretty and graphical. And then we'll see what it looks like. With the brightness turned down a little bit, maybe my main display will see it a little bit. Now it still washes it out. So it definitely has, you know, decent brightness. Let's see if I can look at it on this right monitor. Yeah, so that's another Canon. That's on auto adjust, so it's adjusting down. But decent brightness overall on the panel. I've got it down at 50% right now. And so in a dark room, this would be more than fine at 50%. In a bright room, you'd probably have to bring it up higher. But I'll do my full calibration and we'll find out how it does. But that was, yeah, really interesting that they have monitors at this price range. I know Scepter's had some pretty value-based monitors. I showed a few of those this morning. But the View Edge coming in, it works. It's a monitor. Now let's take a look at the side bezels. You want to talk about you know, edges? That's how thick the edges are on it. So if you see my thumbnail, it's about 1/4 inch or less. And then the thickness overall and super light. So not bad at all here. Now this is running the 4060. We haven't really tuned the machine up. I haven't downloaded all the drivers, haven't activated anything, but I do just want to see how it looks here. Oh, interesting. Open RGB is useful over the built-in motherboard RGB. It's compatible with many different vendors. I've never used that. I need to look into that. I'm getting sound here from superposition, which is funny because I've never actually listened to the sound on it. I'm going to turn the speakers down. Yeah, so pretty much from 4 to 30 is about the same. And you can keep going up, but they don't actually get any louder. That's the standard for speakers. So the range is actually from about 4 to 30. They don't overdrive the speakers though, which is kind of cool. So you're not having to deal with that. So far, colors, it does have some color wash. If I move to the side, I'm just trying to get a good straight on angle. You're seeing it at a slight side angle too. The refresh rate is noticeable. Like you can see how smooth this is. I'm getting almost the full 180 here. Yeah, I'm getting that 4060 is putting some work in here. You can see how smooth that is. It's looking really good. But we're going to see max FPS is 203, minimum is 135. But machine is working really nicely. I want to see what all of the thermals look like on this too, especially that CPU. Doesn't seem to have any problem on this. Again, it's funny because I'm bouncing this a little bit in the stands, giving a little wobble. Does that pretty quickly. If you're just tuning in, this is John the Net Guy. We're taking a look at the View Edge 27-inch running on a brand new machine that we just built over the last live stream. We're in scene 10 of 17 on a benchmark here. And the reason we're running the benchmark is we want to make sure that, one, the machine is stable. And two, I wanted to see the color on this monitor. You know, is it like overly saturated? Some of the HP monitors were super saturated, like obnoxiously when you got them. I don't think it is, but it is for a 1080p panel on a 27. The pixels just kind of blend away. I'm actually surprised at how nice it looks. And I don't know if that's the pitch between the pixels that's doing that, but it looks decent overall. We'll see about color accuracy when we put it on there, but to the naked eye, this looks like superposition. Doesn't look bad. And we're running on a 12700KF chip. If you're looking on Amazon right now, that's one thing I'll say is the 12700KF is a very good chip. It's solid. There are a couple other deals, and I'm going to bring that up for you real quick right now. There is right now for Black Friday, the 12600 was 130. I thought I saw a deal on that, and you know, that's pretty good value. So I see the 12600 here is 149. 12600 KF is 159. Oh, there's a coupon. That's why. So you got to click on this one. So the KF is the non GPU CPU. If you click this, it's going to drop it down to $129.99. So if you're looking for an Intel upgrade, maybe that's there. It's going to have 6 performance, 4 efficiency cores. I believe that the 12700 has 2 extra performance cores. So you get a little bit more longevity potentially out of this one. If we come back to our results here, we got 19,599 on superposition here. Would have to compare that online to see what that turns out as. And I just want to do one other quick check here. HW info. I want to see what my temperatures look like real fast on this. That's another thing we would just normally run to make sure. Usually you would know if your pump wasn't running fast enough. So I'm going to say sensors. Oh, not sensors only. I want to know everything about the machine real quick. Okay. Looks good overall. Everything's in the green. We've got our NVMe here, 16 gig a second. It says we're going to see how that works. Secure boot's not enabled, but I don't ever usually enable that. Let's also go into here to sensors, and I'm just looking to see temperature. So we're chilling right now. Current is 28C. So this thing, 30C, that 120 mil AIO is really keeping the temperatures down, which is impressive. We're not running a super big load on it right now, but that's really slick. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run just the crystal disk mark here, because this is for the SN770 was the hard drive we have in here. It's an NVMe drive. Usually I would make sure Windows is not doing any updates and a bunch of other stuff, but I'm just doing a quick non-scientific test here. I want to see what the read and write speeds are, and then we'll shut down for the night. Thank you guys for tuning in, by the way, and sticking around if you stuck through the whole thing. Love it. Jonathan's posting on Instagram about us. Wow, look at that. Did we beat the advertised rate already on this? This thing says up to 5,150 read speed. We're at 5221. So we're faster than the advertised speed on the read side. Let's see what happens on the write side. That's always a challenge here. So that is from Western Digital. I'm going to check the Amazon chat, make sure nobody was asking questions that we might have missed. There we go. Oh, thank you for the extra follows. Adamaris Garcia, that's awesome. Clayman, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. A couple of you guys, actually 3 of you, checked out the cooler. That's awesome. We got a bunch of clicks on the CPU, a couple clicks on the tower, and the View Edge monitor got a click here. So we're taking this look at this monitor right on Amazon Live right now. I'm looking through here. The Western Digital. Let's pull up that Western Digital while we're running this. I'll try to keep it in the corner for you. So, well, that didn't work. I'll try to keep it in the corner for you here so you can see me and this thing running. The Western Digital is a little bit more expensive than your standard brands. I look at like a Samsung Evo kind of, price rating. But overall, decent 4.8 on 19,000, almost 19,000 ratings. So decent reviews overall. We're just about to get into the write speeds here. Just pulling this up. So sequential read over 5,000 megabytes per second. No, it doesn't have any sort of thermal conduction here. So if you had maybe a heat sink, you could throw that on just for longevity. These things can warm up if you're doing a ton, but it doesn't seem to be thermal throttling at all. The SN850 Black comes with a heat sink, which is what I'm thinking. That's my other one that I use personally every day. So it's kind of an interesting product to look at. It's $112 right now for this one. And we're about to get the write speed test. And look at that, 4,900 megabytes per second right off the bat, 4,909. So we're seeing that it's pushing up to that. Now, I did have a Sabrent Rocket Q4, and it had the 5,000 read, but it had like 1,000 megabytes per second write, which was lower than even some budget SSDs, or NVMEs, I should say. And so it's really interesting to see this one is neck and neck on its write speeds. And it's going to do a couple more tests on that, and then it's going to move on to the next one. So it's moving on to the non-sequential writes. But I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. This was a really fun build today. I've got to put this back somewhere so I can put Eleanor out front. This was the star of our show today, Eleanor. She is my nemesis. She's the one that we had trouble getting this one out here. I said before I sold it on Jawa GG, and it had problems. But this one, I'm hoping, is going to make up for that. A gorgeous looking PC. Got a 120 mil AIO in there. We got RGB RAM, and then we even got a GeForce 4060 in there. 4060 is the same performance. I wish I could light this up better on that side. Maybe I need to put an RGB strip around the outside, because I think that would just give it a little bit more light. I'll see if I can do that to kind of brighten it up a little in there. But we are going to look for an Eleanor model to put on there like all the cool kids do, and we will definitely spice this one up. So I just want to say thank you again for everybody that tuned in. It's been fun having you on the stream. I'm going to say goodbye here, but I do stream live on Tuesdays, so mostly that's my day I stream, or Fridays or Saturdays or whenever. And I did 2 streams today. If you want to, check out the URL that's scrolling down below, because I post all of my deals on there, and I'll even on Twitter post some really cool specials if I see them, so you can get those. Thanks for everybody that tuned in, and I will catch you guys all in a future video.